guys, welcome and welcome back to the podcast. I've been meaning to watch that. I'm your host Monica, and we are joined again. New week, new topic, new guest every single week. And this week is a very wonderful guest. This is someone that I've been following for a very long time, like probably since I joined Twitter, which was a long time ago, and I've had several different Twitter accounts since then. Don't try to find them; they're all gone. But I just want to introduce to you guys our guest. She is a media critic. You may have seen her on Twitter, giving her opinion on certain things in pop culture and film. She's a writer. She is pretty well known in the fangirl space because that is, kind of related to her name. And I would like everyone to give a warm welcome to FangirlJeanne, or just Jean.
Hi,
Just Jean.
Jean. Either one is fine.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so happy to have you on. It's such a wonderful treat and a delight. And I was so happy when I found you on TikTok because I was like, oh my gosh, she's out here too. And then we started following each other, and I was like, oh, this is cool. This is dope.
And it was very fun. It's like the early days
Yeah.
of Twitter, of like refinding people that I knew from other platforms. Like, hey,
Yeah,
oh,
me
we're still
too.
alive. We're still alive.
Oh, you're still at it. Oh, it's so nice to see. Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. And guys, we're going to be talking about The House of the Dragon, which is the Game of Thrones spinoff and a hit HBO series that is coming up on their season 2 in June. It's June, right?
Yeah, I believe it's June. I can't
Yeah.
remember the exact day, but
There is no
June.
exact date. That's the thing. They just said it's in June.
You're just taunting us.
Yes, they are. But you know what? We're very excited, and we're very excited to dive into it with you. But before that, we're going to dive into our first segment of the podcast, which is called Media Mania, where we talk about entertainment news and pop culture, new releases, and anything else that, is coming on your timeline. And the first thing that I wanted to cover was kind of sad news that I saw over my timeline. And apparently, Akira Toriyama, who is Dragon Ball's manga creator, he died at 68. This
So
highly,
sad.
yeah, it is sad. Apparently, he had passed away March 1st due to an acute subdural hematoma, and it is very, very it's heavy news to receive because I know so many people who love Dragon Ball and growing up, and they loved the manga, they loved the anime, they were obsessed with it. It was like the first anime that they watched, and that introduced them to the whole world. And I watched it too when I was younger, but I wasn't that into it as other people were, but I could recognize like the kind of community and kinship that being a Dragon Ball fan will like bring to you. And at a young age, I feel like that's so vital. It's so pivotal. And I feel like for a lot of people that was like the first thing that you really like hyperfixate on. The first thing you really like obsess over. So I know that this loss means a lot to a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I've haven't, never been into it, and
Mm.
I'm an old lady, but I've seen, like you said, it's like it's one of many different series that are a great entry point. They're really accessible to kids, and it sticks with people. And so I grieve with the fans, and might need to actually go and check it out. I do know some friends who read fanfic from that fandom, but I don't know if they've actually ever watched it. I hear the fanfic is really good though.
Okay. Good to know. I'll keep that in
I'll
mind.
get you some Rex.
Oh my god. Okay. I'll be looking out for that. Yeah, that's great. But yeah, I just want to show my love because honestly, me, I was never someone who was really into anime. When I was younger, I tried to get into it, but I could never find the love for it. But then I started getting into anime recently because I finished Jujutsu Kaisen, which is a newer anime that came out in 2020, and now I'm watching Demon Slayer, and now I do have an appreciation for the show, for the love, for the art, and I just, I do have a love for it. I appreciate it a little bit more. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get into anime until I want to say I was like a freshman in college. I think it was the first time I saw Vampire Hunter D. And then, you know, at that point, like anime was pretty much, you had young kids, and mostly on the West Coast. And I didn't meet a lot of East Coast fans, but West Coast, because we're so, you know, our proximity made it more accessible for me. Like, I, other than like Sailor Moon, yeah, Sailor Moon, and then like Inuyasha were the things that kids like younger than me were watching. But I got into like the horror anime stuff, like Vampire Hunter D, and I think Dark City, and stuff like that, that quickly devolved in things like tentacle stuff, but didn't go that deep. But yeah, so it like for me, especially like living on the West Coast and Seattle, especially like going to like, you know, niche video stores and finding like import videos that you had to have a special, you know, VCR to play. It was always, it's interesting to me seeing like how, like with now, you know, it's Crunchyroll makes everything so accessible. There's like too many animes,
Yeah.
like, and all my younger cousins and my nieces, they're like, have you watched this? Have you? And like, I know of it because everybody's talking about like Jujutsu Kaisen and My Hero Academia and all these things. And I'm like, I've heard of them, but like, I don't have a lot of time in the day. You guys have so many things you think I need to be watching. Yeah, like, but it's wonderful. I'm happy for everyone to have such, you know, an embarrassment of riches when it comes to anime.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad to see that like, you know, anime is still very popular. Animation is an art form that is being heralded, and I just wish it was embraced more because I'm getting really tired of like these live action adaptations for anime. Like me personally, I have not watched Avatar or Legend of Korra. When it was on Nickelodeon, I missed my chance. Okay, and I know it's on Netflix, and it's one of those things that's perpetually been on my watch list. But seeing the like Avatar live action show come out, it was never something I was going to watch because if I wanted to watch Avatar, I would simply watch Avatar. I don't need a live like I don't need the live action adaptation for it because I feel like animation achieves something that you can't achieve in like filming things to live action, filming things IRL, I guess. Like animation is a beautiful art form that allows you to, you know, explore stories and explore the limits of storytelling in a way that conventional filmmaking cannot achieve. And I feel like trying to make everything into a live action doesn't make it better. It's just kind of dulling this thing that you love because to use CGI instead of just using like animation, it's just like a waste of money and time. And it's not likely that like they'll do the adaptation is due service as we've seen with end of Avatar. Like One
Yeah, I
Piece is a
mean,
different story, but you know.
yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a couple things. Like, I think this fad of live action adaptations of popular animation is really just kind of a money grab, and you know, other studios are following suit because they've
Right.
bought these properties, right? But the thing I like about anime, and specifically anime, is that it was, like I said, accessible to people of all ages, and it was an accessible way for English speaking, especially Americans, to see a different type of culture of filmmaking and storytelling. And so often I've through the years when I've talked to friends who are trying to recommend things to me like movies or books, and I always go like, I want something that's like an anime. It doesn't have to explain everything to me. It literally drops me in the middle of action. I don't know who anybody is, you know, who anybody is. I don't know why they're fighting, but I'm so invested within the first 5 minutes of the story, which is like a you know, a especially of the story, the animes that I started watching, that was the big thing. I'm like, I don't need to know this. I will pick it up along the way. And it seems like, and you know, especially nowadays, it seems like it's such the opposite in American media, of that it has to tell me everything, and everything has to be a definitive read
Mm.
of what it means,
Mm.
rather than just like kind of giving you these beautiful images and a very straightforward story usually. And but the, you know, gives you like all kinds of colorful, interesting characters
Mm-hmm.
and amazing worlds and imaginative, stories that you can kind of pick and enjoy yourself. And I think this one, like, I wouldn't say it's an unpopular opinion per se.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be, because I like Avatar. I enjoyed it for what it was, but I can say that as having watched it, and it's probably just an old lady thing of that, I watched it and I was like, okay, this is made by American anime fans, and it was made to kind of like these dudes and very distinctly white dudes interpreting that type of storytelling and world building for an American audience. And I think they did a really good job. It's a great world. It's got great characters, but I think there are definitely things that I felt, again, I felt a lot more spoon feedy. And that is one of the reasons I don't get too into the fandom, because there is so many like, this is what it's like, and this is the only things. And people, you know, again, like that American, especially American thing of like, this is the definitive read of this. And you can't argue because now canon has answered these questions, especially when Korra came along, it was like, oh, it answered even more of the questions. And I don't usually like the, you know, further follow-up, canon follow-up of like what happened to the characters after the end of the story kind of stuff. Because again, it like it's more interesting to allow us to figure out what's going to happen. But yeah, I just yeah, like and also as a person of color, I have mixed feelings about the live action adaptation, because I felt like it was using diversity in casting to hide the money, the cash grab of like, well, here you go. You can stop complaining because look, we put all these, we cast these roles diversely, and so give us your money, give us your eyeballs, and you better make this thing chart or we're not going to do it again. And it felt that way for me, especially with knowing they didn't do due diligence on the background of the character who plays Soka.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's it for my my old lady crabbing for it.
I feel like with them diversifying the cast, it's like, I mean, they have no choice. I don't believe that diversity was something that they used as like, you know, look, we casted it diversely, so you have to watch it. It's more of like, I don't think they really care whether or not people will watch it. I feel like they are going in with these live action adaptations of like they're like, of course people are gonna watch it. Like that's a given to them. They're gonna make them
Yeah,
anyways. You know what I
right,
mean?
sure.
And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
because these are a cash grab, like you said, that's why they didn't do the due diligence of finding out that like the actor who played Sokka is not actually Native American, you know?
Hmm.
And a lot of the other actors I find don't accurately reflect the characters that they are playing. So, that's a conversation for a whole nother day. But
Oh, right. Like, but I do feel like I think where my resentment comes from is that it seems like across the industry that
hmm.
casting announcements for characters have now become a form of promotion
Yeah, of
for
course.
upcoming, right? Like, and so much so that like I don't know, maybe it's just from like again like having there seems to be such a huge like cut in promotional materials for shows, especially where I saw somebody I follow on TikTok, JJ Dragon Lady, I think is her handle. She was talking about like, we get in the cycle where we're like, where are the original ideas, and then when things that are original and not original movies or whatnot come out and they don't make the sales, and it's like, well, you said that this is what you wanted but nobody shows up. And it's like, well, it's not necessarily on us when we're not seeing people, like we're not seeing the kind of marketing that used to happen, where not just commercials, but like, where there were contests and there were posters and there was, there are definitely like for the large brand stuff, like Barbie, like big name things, we're getting brand deals and stuff. But I think to some extent it is, um, companies not knowing how to use social media properly. They've still been fumbling along trying to figure out how to use social media as a marketing tool. But also, I do think part of it is like this commodification of fandom, where anything that was fan driven, like fan podcasts and, fanzines and like fan communities and stuff like that, have been kind of like taken over. So it's like, well, why should I make why should I make a Walking Dead podcast? Because there's already an official one. Why should I make a House of the Dragon podcast? Because they've already got an official podcast and there's an official this and official that. And I think there's a missed opportunity there in the sense of that we're not getting the type of promotional material, especially for like these smaller things that have the kind of, that are original ideas and aren't franchise things.
Yeah.
That you would think, like, I would think that if a studio is going to like spend the money on an original property with, young unknown cast members, that they would also spend the money on getting this audience to know who these young stars are, to know what this property is about and, what the story is about and get them excited. But like, it's just like, it's like there's, and honestly, this is actually an adaptation. Now I think about it, there's this new movie, I think it's Abigail. I think it's going to come out in April, I think. And it's about a young girl who gets kidnapped by this, motley crew of criminals, right?
Yeah,
and then it turns out she's a vampire. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is actually a very loose adaptation of Dracula's Daughter, which is an old, like, classic Universal movie. Mm-hmm. But even then, like, I've only ever seen videos of it on TikTok. And it's only amongst the few people that are either like movie creator people or horror fans that I see talking about it. And I'm like, this has got some actors that are known in it, and it's a vampire movie. Like, why isn't there more fanfare around this? Why isn't there more buzz? But anyway, that's just, it feels like they're not investing in, what is it, like, propagating excitement and audience interest in these things. Again, like, they're just throwing the money at things that they know they're going to get a return on because it's an established IP. And then these other little projects don't really get a lot of attention or marketing.
Yeah, they did do that a lot with the Griselda show when that first dropped. They had like a truck that they drove around, I think New York, that was like purple and had the Griselda like colors on it. And it's clear that when it's their larger properties that they're already spending a lot of money on, they're willing to put promotion behind it. But if it's something a bit smaller and something that not a lot of people are going to watch, then they are just going to kind of put it on their platform, maybe stick it on the front page for like a day or two, and then just kind of hope that people watch it, but not really like put any effort behind it. Like, The Brother's Son was a really good show that I watched on Netflix that starred Michelle Yeoh, and I did a whole podcast episode about it with Mar, who's someone I also follow on TikTok, who's wonderful and amazing. And we talked about the show and how great it was. And to find out that was canceled by Netflix is so disappointing because all of the actors on the show talked about it. Like, even Michelle Yeoh was on her press tour, and during her press tour, she was asked about the Oscars, which I found really annoying because, like, ask her about the show, not about the Oscars. Like, that's not the relevant conversation right now. And it's just frustrating.
Journalism too has been taking a big hit on, like, right? I don't want to know about, like, I don't want to hear the same stuff that she said on her Oscar tour. I want to know about the show and why she got into it, right? And
yeah, it is very frustrating to see Netflix do this time and time again. And I do have to say, with shows that they have, like, when they have a younger cast on their shows, they do wheel that younger cast out. Like, the cast, they do like a full press tour circuit where they go to Wired, 17 Mag, they do Teen Vogue, they do like all the cute little, video interviews with like BuzzFeed and everything to try and, get people interested in the show. And they've done that with shows that are popular like Avatar, and they've done that with shows that are less popular like Lockwood and Co. But really, at the end of the day, like, you can't simply do just like one part of the promotion for your show and then drop the ball on
Exactly.
everything else, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, and that it feels like you can feel the budgeting meeting when you see these things of like someone decided, okay, we're gonna, we're only gonna just do this thing and then that's it. We're not gonna pay for anything more. I
Mm-hmm.
just think about like even just like the height of the, you know, uh, Twitter live tweeting of popular shows or even not popular shows. Like I just remember like, those significant times like man, live tweeting Sleepy Hollow and like how
Mm-hmm.
that was like we've to some extent it also is like social media is shifting and changing and so we're all trying to find our feet again. But I remember those heydays of like where half of the enjoyment was watching other people's reactions and reaction gifs and memes that came out of everybody watching the episode that night and live tweeting it or tweeting our reactions afterwards and like
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that so much of that was what got a lot of these shows to get really big and got their, that proved, the money for these, gambling that streaming took on some of these properties. And I feel like we've lost that maybe because of social media, but also I know there was a lot of very valid, the ongoing discussion of how Black labor on social media and stuff is really undercut and
Mm-hmm.
undersold. And it was one of those things where I was like when they were doing like the podcast The Talking Dead and like the after shows and stuff and they do have some like Black participants in these shows but I kept thinking like why aren't more of the folks on on Twitter who are making these memes who are on social media creating the sensation like creating the cultural conversation about this media why aren't these people involved in this
Mm-hmm.
why aren't they having and it's weird because now I see this with like I'm sure you see it too on TikTok where you've got people who are doing promotional stuff for movies and TV shows and stuff and I see them like going to premieres and things but that's not stuff that drives engagement so much as like them posting every week to talk about the episode that aired or let's all meet up and have a live stream talking about the season that just dropped or stuff like that. I don't see those and maybe it's just it doesn't pop up on my FYP and stuff but I don't see it as much and so I think that also plays into like where I don't know if these execs have a good barometer about what is successful, especially, that whole debate of like, you know, uh, that was going on with the strikes of that, are they really making a profit on these shows? Like it's the subscription model not working it is there's only so many people in the world to subscribe and even
Mm-hmm.
their new pivots is this model really gonna work long term anyway that's a whole rambly thing but
No, I definitely hear you. I agree with everything you just said. They brought up a lot of valid points in regards to that. And with the TikTok thing, I feel like I saw a video about this the other day. A lot of people who get invited to like premieres and stuff, they fit the kind of person that they want on the red carpet. They're looking for personalities. They're not really looking for analysis, which is something that like I've had to like kind of reckon with because I see a lot of people that interview celebrities and are on red carpets that do not have the same platform that I have. And it's kind of like, well, I can either change my entire persona or I could just keep making the things I'm making and just continue to have my own platform and then invite people that I want to have on. And eventually that will be recognized because I'm not going to bend over backwards to try and like fit some kind of persona that they want to put on in front of like famous people to like, do whatever it is they're looking for. Not to talk badly about anybody, or not to shade anybody really, but it's just, you
no
know,
I mean but it is just I think I think of it as like the influencer effect in the sense of not like to vilify influencers but in the sense of that there is a look that is seen as marketable. And,
Mm-hmm.
we can go into all the different privilege, the layers of privilege, be it, male privilege, pretty privilege, thin privilege, like all the, like there is a definite, a particular type of person and personality that will always be more of what they're looking for to make, by virtue of having that internet personality there, they're making it desirable. And I don't think that kind of marketing actually works, especially on platforms that are much more, even though it's visual, they're much more personality based. And so I think, you can get a lot of numbers with some people, but is it really going to translate into viewership? And I don't know if that's really going to work for them. Again, like I said, I'm coming from a whole old school thing of fandom where we had message boards,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where we talked about shows. But so, maybe I'm just not even used to this new, wave of how we do this. So
No, it's fine. Things adapt and we adjust and things change, and that's cool. But there was one other story I wanted to talk about before we dive into House of Dragon, and I feel like this story was something that I didn't expect, but I find it to be, I guess, refreshing to see. But recently, Angela Bassett had an interview with Oprah as part of the OWN Spotlight series, and she admitted that she was basically gobsmacked when she lost the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress last year. She was nominated for a performance as Queen of Wakanda in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and she lost to Jamie Lee Curtis in her performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And, she said in the interview, I just knew my name was going to be called. I was beside myself when it wasn't. We were beside ourselves. I was gobsmacked. I thought I handled it very well. That was my intention, to handle it very well. It was, of course, a supreme disappointment, and disappointment is human. So I thought, yes, I was disappointed, but I handled it like a human. And I remember just seeing that tweet, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad she said that, because a lot of times people, when it comes to award shows, I feel like usually, like, normal people like us, we just see celebrities win these awards or lose these awards, and you want to say something and you want them to say something, but you know that, like, it possibly isn't the best look for you to complain about not winning the shiny golden trophy when your job is so perfect and wonderful, and, like, you're very privileged to be in that spot and everything like that. But Angela Bassett, having the career and the legacy that she has had throughout the decades that she has worked in Hollywood, it is understandable that she would be disappointed, because as Rwanda, like, as her role in Black Panther, like, it is her most popular role to date as of right now for, I mean, young people, really. It is incredibly, like, well done, and she carries herself with grace, and she's honestly the perfect person to play the role that she played. And I understand that she was disappointed, because we're all disappointed. People have been saying for years that she deserved an Oscar, you know?
yeah, and I think it, not just the, like you said, not just the looking ungrateful to the audience. I think the Oscars is really less about the audience and film fans and much more about the old school culture of Hollywood, and that, appealing to this very old archetypical, boys club of, like, I think the gratefulness and the gratitude is very much expected from everyone to, to those people who, consider themselves the tastemakers of Hollywood, even if they're not. And I think that like all of the to do about her reaction, I mean, it definitely is racist. They were upset that she didn't feel, she didn't act appropriately. And I think it was really important for her. Like I like you said, I'm really happy she said it, because I think more of us need to hear that and normalize the
And
fact that
now,
when we do hard work and when we do great work, like which is her entire career, that we have every right to be upset when we aren't acknowledged when we should be. And yeah, like her and Taraji B. Henson, a lot of like all of the truth telling that they're both doing is, I think, really so wonderful and such a gift for like us going forward, because they're coming out of generations that definitely, I think about, the conversations that we're having now about racism and representation and stuff in the Hollywood industry. These were things that I was introduced to with the movie Hollywood Shuffle
Mm-hmm.
back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating to see a lot of the same conversations happening again, and like seeing people talk about like, the roles that they were only allowed to read for, and and finding out the actors and actresses that are younger than me were being called urban. And I'm like, this is that what still?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like she definitely there was no reason for her to lose that.
That's very
It was
true.
definitely politics, but
Yeah.
I think it's good that we're having these moments of reckoning where, women, and especially Black women, can be like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm not going to be humble because I
Yeah.
did this work and I deserve your respect.
Absolutely. And I think that Taraji and Angela both come from a generation of actors who are kind of just like, there's this mindset you have like, you should be grateful that you're here. You should be grateful that you're in the room. You should be grateful that they acknowledge you. Like, Taraji, what she did, Cookie on Empire, that's truly when like the general audience found out who she was, even though she was, I'm pretty sure she was like well into her 40s by the time she was playing Cookie, So,
Yeah, like all of these names, like Viola Davis, like all of these women, I'm like,
mm-hmm.
I remember, seeing the Octavia Spencer. Like I've seen these women in
Yeah.
countless shows and movies, and it's like all of a sudden, I my my older white family members are like, "Oh yeah, that new actress." I'm like, "No, she was on a show we watched."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. People are not really cognizant of a lot of black actors. And it's also a clip from I don't know if it's an NBC show or an ABC show, but apparently there is a show on TV where you basically guess who celebrities are by looking at them. And there was a clip where people all cutted the white contestants, yes, and they didn't know who any of the black
It
people
was a
were.
Fox. It is a
Okay.
Fox, I don't think it was Fox and Friends, but it was
Why
that
do
time,
so
like a
many
Fox.
network shows have these stupid game shows? Like the Newlywed Game, the Scrabble game, the Shazam game with Randy Jackson. Like all these shows are stupid. And I don't want to be too rude because I know that Kiki Palmer was on a show with Jimmy Fallon, so obviously get your coin girl. But like these shows are obviously like shows you based off of like games you can find in the Facebook game store. And it's just annoying to
It's
see
just
that.
popcorn. It's
Yeah.
popcorn entertainment, and especially like it provides that catharsis that like some, reality TV shows can provide for people, where they can feel like they're smarter than the people they're watching on
Mm-hmm.
TV. And I
It
mean, like, it's not things like, like I'll stand by Jeopardy because I'm always learning something new from Jeopardy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of these shows, and I do feel like a lot of them are like throwbacks to, not throwbacks, but in a sense of like, you can kind of you can take the temperature of like the economy and the American, like working class feelings of the more media that is coming out like that, like
Mm-hmm.
game show stuff that are presenting for good fortune as a game of chance, that it's, people are facing hardship. I just think about like a big boom era of game shows in like the late 70s and into the 80s, when we were having like the oil shortages, and we were heading into Reagan and all of that, and like these idea of that, just one thing, you get one thing right and you can buy your way out of poverty or out of the strife that you're in. And that's what I think about. Like I keep seeing new games pop up and stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, we are really poor, and they're really trying to convince us that it's okay, that we could just win our way out of this, and it won't be that bad and distract us. But yeah, that's I don't like those games specific because of that myth. But yeah,
that is actually pretty cool. I didn't know that. Yeah. To tie it back to Angela Bassett, I think I really admire her just opening up and being honest about it, because it's like the professional and the graceful thing to do, to not admit your true feelings about how you're upset that you didn't get the Oscar. In the same way that a lot of people find it cringy and like desperate with Bradley Cooper's Oscar campaign, because he wanted so badly to be nominated for Best Director, and he has tried to be nominated for Best Director several times over. Not several times over, but there was American Sniper, and then there was like A Star Is Born. So it's been like, this is his third time around where he wants to be nominated for Best Director, or at least like, at the very least, like, win Best Director truly.
right.
And
Just get an Oscar somehow.
yeah,
Get the validation.
yeah, it's very clear that he wants this and he desires this. And for a lot of people, you know, you see it and it's like, you're doing too much. Like, you should just be glad that you're in the room. You should be grateful. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to be recognized for your work and what you're doing. And to be genuine and open about your feelings towards it is understandable, because if you're someone like Bradley Cooper, who spent a lot of his time being in comedic roles in comedic movies where people didn't take you seriously, and then you finally get good acting roles and you're recognized for your talents as an actor, you want to be taken seriously as a director. You want to receive that recognition. You want to receive that acclaim. As someone as Angela Bassett, who is iconic and, you know, known as a graceful, beautiful, and amazing actress, and a very iconic and inspiring woman, you would like some kind of recognition from, you know, the jury of your peers, and you would like to be celebrated in that way, in a way that is like the biggest stage in terms of filmmaking. And it's understandable that she would want that, you know, like, she still has so much more in her career that could lead her to winning any kind of award. But with Black Panther, especially Black Panther 2, in the way like that film was kind of like an homage to Chadwick, and also the continuation of like his, like, the journey and the story of the Black Panther, it would make sense for her to win that Oscar. And it would honestly be wonderful for her to win the Oscar. And I don't think anybody judging, like, a lot of people think she shouldn't have won the Oscar because it's Marvel and like that's not good enough. Like, Black Panther and Black Panther 2 are not the typical kind of Marvel movies. I feel like we can all understand that. And I feel like the role that she played is something that is outside of the Marvel landscape and is something that should be recognized.
Right. And like, I don't think that those arguments are always just, you know, kind of silly, especially like if we're looking at what the awards are supposed to be looking at, which is supporting performance. And she, especially because of the loss of Chadwick, so much was on her shoulders about maintaining being the symbol of
You're fine.
Being the symbol of the old Wakanda and the world that you know, that conflict. She was representing, you know, the conflict between these two older ways of operating, and then this new generation. And just so much about how she conducted herself, and especially when you think about how many few scenes she actually had, and what she was supposed to get across. She really was like commanding the emotions of the audience in the film. So that's why I never take the whole, it's a comic book movie. I'm like, well, that just shows that you don't actually pay attention to films, because it doesn't matter that it's a comic book movie. There's a story being told here, and there's performances that are supporting this story. And if you can't like dice that up, then obviously you don't need to judge it. And I can't say per se, like, no hate to Jamie Lee Curtis. It's more of just
actually we can, because her performance was the weakest one in that movie. She is the last person who should have won an Oscar. I love Jamie Lee Curtis. I love Freaky Friday. I think she's
Oh my
great. I didn't
God,
even know she
right?
was a Nepo baby. But she did not deserve an Oscar. They gave it to one of the only white women in that category. If not Angela Bassett, then
That's
Stephanie Hsu. But
let
please, don't
let
even
me
try. Like, you don't
let
have to
me
hold your
tell
tongue
you.
like this. Jamie Lee didn't deserve it, girl. I'm sorry. Like,
No,
a
no,
Teen Chase
no,
Award,
no.
maybe. An MTV Movie Award, maybe. An Oscar? I'm
Let
sorry,
me
girl. You
tell
gotta
you.
head that back. The second I saw her on Good Morning America holding that proudly, I was like, you better put that in a box and send it to Angela Bassett. You know that is not yours. That was theft.
Dude, let me tell you. The minute that those nominations came out and I saw that they put Jamie in that category, I was like, fuck, they're going to give it to her. And it's just because, like, as an old, jaded movie fan, I've been through the Oscars before. I don't watch them anymore because I have no faith in them.
Nobody watches
And
the
I know
Oscars.
the thought, like the only way they could justify not to themselves of not giving it to Angela Bassett was to give it to Jamie Lee Curtis, who is a legacy baby and who hadn't had that opportunity. And to some extent, because of her age and her gender, there is a thought process that this is probably her last chance to get it. And so that, again, that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, like looking this, having watched these for decades, this is not about who's done a good performance. This is about, who in the industry, they feel deserves to get this type of recognition. And and honestly, it is that old adage, like that literally Angela Bassett
Yeah.
can't get an Oscar. And like, what the hell chance does anybody else have? Like, how much harder does this woman have to work? She should have got this years ago,
Yeah. It's
right?
definitely frustrating to see because I think that because the Oscars love to do this thing where they're like, okay, we're gonna have a couple of diverse people in there because we gotta sprinkle that in there for like to make the Twitter people happy, and that we can nominate, and then the people we want to win, we'll let them win. So I feel like with Jamie Lee winning, it was obvious that Michelle Yeoh was going to take it since people were talking about it so much. That's why I feel like I feel like it's only Destiny that Lily Gladstone is going to get um an Oscar for her performance in Killers of the Flower Moon. I still have this sneaking suspicion that they're going to give Emma Stone Best Supporting Actress, even though Danielle and Miss Divine Joy Randolph are right there. But they want to play with us. They want to play
Yep,
in our face.
they
Um,
absolutely do. And they
yeah,
love Emma Stone.
yeah. And also, I
That's a thing.
remember like Allison Janney won the Oscar for the Tanya Harding movie, and for a lot of people it's like weird because it's like Allison Janney from Mom, but she acted so well in that Tanya Harding movie that it only makes sense that she won it. And for Jamie Lee Curtis, it's
Yeah.
like, girl, we all watched the same movie. What were you giving? What were you giving? If anybody could have won and it was a minor character, it should have been the grandpa. Because honestly, that actor has been acting a lot longer than you have been. So we can shake the table with that argument.
Right. No, it's just like everybody was surprised that Greta Gerwig didn't get nominated for Best Director for Barbie, but Barbie
Yeah.
got. And I'm like, and I was telling a friend of mine, I'm like, oh, that's because they absolutely 100% give 50%, if not more, of the credit of the work she did on Barbie to her husband.
Yeah.
And so they're not gonna nominate her. And I'm like, that's just like, I don't like that I know how they think, but
Mm-hmm.
this is absolutely how they think.
And it does get under my skin that Noah Baumbach was like working with her on the movie because I'm like, why are you with that man? Why him?
Do
Like
I could that
we don't need to get into it. We don't need to get into it. We
well, I know,
can,
because we
but
don't want to because
we can't. We can't
yeah,
go any
because
further.
but yes, like there's a reason everybody loved Ken.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say, and then we'll just let that go.
Honestly, I love Ryan Gosling. I do. And I feel like he is a very wonderful actor. And I'm not going to lie, I wasn't the biggest Ryan Gosling fan. But I watched Nice Guys before I watched Barbie. And I was like, wait a minute. What am I saying? This guy's actually kind of good. Like, why was I hating on him? Like, there's nothing wrong with this guy. But
Right, he's so great.
apparently he's going to bring out like a bunch of dancers with him when he performs I'm Just Ken at the Oscars. So I'm excited for that.
I'm very
I'm
excited to see
excited for
him. Like I love this for him that
yeah.
he has been able to like have fun, and like I want more of these kind of guys that are trying to be marketed as heartthrobs and stuff to get like kooky comedies and
Yeah.
romantic comedies and to be fun and silly and show off their
Yeah.
range.
You don't all need to do westerns and superhero movies and like action films. Like please do something
Right?
lighthearted and fun. Charlie Hunnam, I'm looking at you. You need to laugh. Like
Right?
someone needs to free this man. Just because he is built like a boulder does not mean he has to be a fighter in all his movies. Please. Y'all gotta
Right?
give this man let this man rest.
That this is why I'm actually kind of happy about this very quiet underground resurgence of musicals.
Mm-hmm.
Is I'm like, get these dudes in. You know, most of them can
Please.
sing. Get them in a musical. Get them dancing. Put them in a
Yes.
bow tie.
Listen,
Let them be silly.
Hugh Jackman is not a jock. He is a theater boy through and through. Okay, he is a
All
theater
these
kid.
dudes, right,
Why
are
are we
all.
bringing back Wolverine? There are so many side characters in Deadpool that deserve more time. And you guys are gonna sidelight them again.
Don't even get me started on
We have
Deadpool.
to move forward.
Yes, we
Gee,
have to. Let's get on with the thing because we could talk forever about all these things.
guys, that was Media Mania. So we're just gonna dive right into our discussion about the House of the Dragon, which, as you already know, is the Game of Thrones prequel series, and unlike the original Game of Thrones show, um, thankfully, DB brothers or the DB showrunners from the original Game of Thrones were not involved in House of the Dragon. Instead, author, not me not knowing how to say that word, author George R. R. Martin and Ryan Condal created the prequel series, which is based on George R. R. Martin's book Fire and Blood. Excuse me. This novel follows the long history of House of Targaryen over several generations, and the show really does take the time to explain and go over and answer a lot of questions that people may have about the Targaryen family, as there was subtle mentions of them throughout the Game of Thrones series, but nothing that really dives deep into their history or what happened with the Targaryen house. Like, why is Harrenfell cursed? Who is the Mad King? How did this come to be? Why were their houses torn apart? Were there any other houses that survived the fire of Venerial? I think the name was the fire of Venerial.
Oh,
Vario?
the Doom of Valyria.
Yes, the Doom of Valyria, yes. So the show, because it's its first season, it does take the time to basically kind of break down the start of the Targaryen house, and we get to meet a lot of the characters that lead us to Daenerys Targaryen. And me, first and foremost, I kind of went into the show with no expectations at all because I was such a huge Game of Thrones fan. It was a show that I really loved watching, and it was a show that I love watching just for the entertainment of it. Like, I just wanted to know everything about the show simply because I enjoyed it and I thought that was phenomenal and amazing. And I was disappointed by the seventh season of the show. And when I heard that George R. R. Martin was basically exiting the show and not being involved in the production of the original series, I was disappointed because I didn't feel like the DB brothers had, the skills to carry on this story, because you do need the person who created the original source material to have you stay beholden to the story, so to speak. And with season 8, of course, a lot of people were disappointed by it, and I can understand why, because I also was disappointed by it. And I didn't want to get into like the whole what happened with Daenerys, what happened with Sansa, what happened with Bran, what happened with Jon, and like all this stuff. Like, why was it that Arya never used any of the talents she got from the blind guy when she went through that arduous training for nothing at all? Didn't even get to kill Cersei. Like, we don't have to go into all of that, but I think that the House of the Dragon did a good job of just setting itself up as the prequel series and as the foundation of Game of Thrones as you know it. And I think that it's a really great start. And I find that season 1 had a lot of strong moments. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I did find the show to be a little bit boring. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Not that it overused exposition or anything, and I understand it's the first season, so you have to like explain things. But I feel like a lot of interesting things happened, but it felt more like a melodrama
Mm-hmm.
than anything else. You know what I mean? Like y'all spent too much
Yeah.
time plotting and scheming and being mad that this girl is like sleeping with a knight, but like there are other things to be concerned about. Like y'all need to stop worrying about what she's doing in her bed. Like leave her alone. She has kids. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like you should just be glad that she's having kids at all. Like, but we don't have to get into that. But I know that you read the books, so I'm
Yeah.
interested to see how you thought the show held up in comparison to the Fire and Blood book.
Well, and I really always love getting a perspective of someone who doesn't have. This has been a special interest of mine for a long time. So
Uh
I've
huh.
read all the books and all this. So it always I like knowing what other people who don't know the backstory of this stuff how they feel. And I totally it's also nicely like I figured there were going to be parts that are boring because if you want to judge it pacing wise to me what they were doing because they're cramming obviously you see all those time jumps they're cramming so much stuff in but it's because pacing wise as far as the story of the Dance of the Dragons which is the civil war that we're heading into um, everything that's happening in season 1 of this show is like all of the table dressing that happened in Game of Thrones in that first episode that ends with Jaime pushing Bran out the window. You know how everything was like, okay, so there's these people, and obviously things are happening, and la la
Mm-hmm.
la. And then all of a sudden, oh wait a minute, they're brother and sister, and then oh
Mm-hmm.
my god, the kid's going out the window. Like this, like literally, like the Bran falling is coming up and probably going to be in the first episode of season 2, like where shit gets real and then it
Yeah.
just goes, and it's going to be super exciting. And I thought it was an interesting choice on their part. Not, I mean, they do have some really great dragon scenes in this
Mm-hmm.
season, but that they didn't do any of the battles yet because there's a lot. But
Yeah. I did want to say, I feel like this might be an unfair thing to say, but the big difference between obviously House of Dragon and Game of Thrones is the fact that Game of Thrones, we follow multiple people, multiple stories throughout the series. And it's interesting to see how certain characters interact with each other, like how Arya interacts with the mountain and so forth. And of course, like that is something that I loved about Game of Thrones, seeing different characters in this world, the different lands, become friends or become enemies, and just seeing what happens and how they're connected and how this person knows that person and what's going to happen there. And with the House of Dragon, you are focused solely into the, Targaryen line. And there's also, hold on, I wrote this down in my notes, the Valerian line as well, Targaryen and Valerian. And there isn't any story outside of who they are, and obviously because it's a kind of like foundational story, like we're basically in chapter 1 of what's going to happen with the Targaryens, we can't really move out of that bubble. But I think because we were kind of trapped in that bubble, certain conflicts just kind of felt like it felt like y'all were harping on nothing. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like we're
yeah,
doing a lot here, and I want us to progress. You know?
that's the thing. Like that is the one argument against the compression of all that because there is so first established that the book that this is based on reads much more like a historical text. It's not an actual narrative, so we don't have the benefit of all those multiple POVs to kind of flesh out the world more.
Mm-hmm.
And we really have like I think 3 different perspectives. There's the maester who's writing the book, and then he's taking accounts from I think another maester and a fool, a court jester, who's a little person, and oh, actually maybe one other person, but it's all scraps of information, and it's being written like like I think it's written at the time of Robert's reign, so
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of years after the event, and it's all like documents and letters and just little bits and bobs that are so creating a narrative out of that was going to be difficult to some extent. So I give them that. But there is so much happening over all those periods of time that got smushed in, and we know in the book we know about all these other minor characters, and they get like we get backstories about them, like Damon's paramour that comes over from the east, and she factors in a lot later. And like all the different houses, we get the histories of those houses and those people, and I can see how they didn't want to how it would ruin the pacing to stop and give you a genealogy of this person's house and stuff like that. Also, I feel like that to some extent this season 1 was proof of concept too.
Mm-hmm.
Like HBO was like, okay, we'll give you the money for this one,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can make it go, then we'll, and because I'm curious, I don't know, I think they're greenlit for season 2. I don't know if they're greenlit for a season 3.
Just two, I
But
think.
the war takes place across many different points
Mm-hmm.
in Westeros, so there is an opportunity there to meet new characters and have different perspectives of things going on.
Mm-hmm.
So possibly we'll get something that feels a little bit closer to that, spread out narrative of multiple POVs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is much more like this opening part is so much more about the court intrigue and then the family dynamics. It's really about the family, and about Viserys not really being suited to be a king, and it kind of destroying him, and how all the mistakes that he makes really sow the seeds for this of him both trying to be a king and trying to be a good father, and how you can't necessarily be both.
Mm-hmm. It
But
is interesting because Viserys, to me, I know they call him Viserys the Peaceful. I just think of that as he didn't do nothing. He just sat on his butt and really didn't do anything. And I understand why. Oh my gosh, I forget the guy's name, but it's the Valerian who is married to.
Oh, the the sea snake.
Rains? Is that her name? Oh, the sea snake.
Oh, you're talking about Rhaenys?
Rhaenys' husband.
Who should have been, yeah, Rhaenys' husband. I always,
Oh, wait. Hold on. Yeah. Rhaenys' husband. It's the same as sea snake? It's Corlys.
Corlys,
Yeah, Corlys.
Valerian, and
Yes.
I always call him the sea snake because that's his, his name, his nickname is
Oh.
his handle is the sea snake, because all of the great, he is the great explorer of this era.
Mm.
He sailed to all these places. He essentially his house was not to get too deep into the lore, but when the Targaryens flew over, the Valerians were already in Westeros.
Mm-hmm.
Set up on their island, and essentially them and the Targaryens created a blockade where because the major port of trade was going through right where Dragonstone is.
Mm-hmm.
And so they basically, between the ships, the Valerian ships and the Targaryen dragons, they were basically shaking down merchants coming through there, and that's how they made their money.
Mm-hmm.
And but also, when Corlys came along, he wanted to be more than that. He wanted to make their house great, and so he sailed all over, and brought all back the treasure. So when we go to Driftmark, which is the seat of House Valerian, when they're when they go and meet him in his chambers, when he makes the series come to him, there's all these big artifacts, like a giant shell and all those, and they're all just treasures he's brought back from his adventures.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, sorry, what were you gonna say about Corlys?
Yeah, I was just talking about Viserys and how essentially he only became king, of course, because they wanted him to be king. They want a man. They think a man is a better leader. And even though Rhaenys was the daughter of the guy who was supposed to be king, I believe, they didn't want her to be, the ruler.
Yeah, so it was his grandfather who was the king,
yes,
and who was trying to decide on who should succeed him.
Yes.
And all of the king's sons, who would have been his heirs, had all died.
Yeah.
But the Rhaenys was the eldest child of the eldest son.
Mm-hmm.
And so
It would make
it,
sense if
people were
Rhaenys
pulling
was a
for her.
man.
Yeah.
She would have been
And
heir.
but they went with him. Well, and also the show kind of muddies it a little bit, because in the books, she was actually petitioning for her eldest son, Laenor, to be
Yes.
the one. And
Yes, she was. And it also in the books, I watched this in a video. In the books, the Meisters had like a conspiracy against dragons, and because Rhaenys had a dragon and Laenor had a dragon, they didn't want them to be the ruler. But because Viserys' dragon had died, they decided to basically manipulate the votes so that he could be the
that's a
ruler.
that's a fan theory. So it's not
Okay.
necessarily in the books. It's just one of the many rumors of things. And for my part, again, this is, my reading of it is that there is definitely, it's less, I think, less about a conspiracy against dragons, particularly, or magic. It's about power and about being able to wrest, because at that point in time, being a dragon rider was kind of equated to being royalty, which then prevented anybody who wasn't a dragon rider from
Mm-hmm.
being royalty and having control of the throne. And so getting the series, who didn't have a dragon, never rode a dragon after, his dragon died, and definitely kind of had an issue with dragons, opened up that door to be able to get another family in there to kind of take over, because that's the only real way that they could have, which is resulting in what we're seeing in the events of House of the Dragon,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially House Hightower trying to take the throne.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, I mean, I think one of the things about that we see repeated again and again in the show through this is there's a multitude of factors, both on other houses trying to take over House Targaryen, the question of gender politics and what that says, and that also explains why we're having these incestuous marriages.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm one of those people that is very much about, like, so much about remembering that these books are written as unreliable narrators. There's a reason why the original series is from individual point of views,
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to be restricted by their cultural beliefs, what they can see and understand, but we're supposed to be piecing together what's really going on. And
Mm-hmm.
it's same way in these history tomes, is like we're being told a story like second, third hand by someone who definitely has their own agenda of what they're trying to say. So everything that we are told about, like, the Targaryens and their dragons and how magic works, is what we've been told by Targaryens. And one of the the drums that I've always beat was that the Targaryen incest has nothing to do with the ability to ride dragons, and it has everything to do with holding on to control, much like how incestuous marriage was used in the real history of royals. And that was about control and making sure that only a small number of people who were all blood related maintained power over all these different countries. And in the case of, and one of the big factors here is with that whole argument of succession that ended up with the series, is gives us insight into why the first Aegon, who was the founder of the House Targaryen, who was married to two sisters, it gives us insight into why he married his two sisters, because Aegon was not the oldest. His sister wife, Visenya, was the oldest child.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the one that was as, if not better of a warrior than he was. And so it makes sense for him to marry both his sisters to both, secure his, head of the household, but also to erase her claim to the throne. And so, like, if Viserys hadn't been married, it's very likely that they would have tried, and if Rhaenys hadn't been married, they probably would have tried to solve the succession problem by having them marry each other, which is a thing that comes up later, where Rhaenyra proposes that her son, I think Jacary's, marries Alicent's daughter, since Jacary's is in line for the throne after Rhaenyra, as a way
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, close the breach between the two families, and also kind of eliminate any kind of debate over who's. I mean, that's what this is all about. You know, the issues with Rhaenyra having children that don't look like her husband, and the issue of what that means about securing heirs for herself. All of this has to do with like how these families control power, and how gender is part of that, and also like seeing how these women like Rhaenyra's mother, of like that is the type of role, the only role closest to power that women of her mother's era had, which was having babies, and then being like murdered terribly for the sake of a baby that didn't survive. And like I do think that's like interesting way to explore this, that then helps. I definitely see in the series that they've tried to tie these characters, or remind us of characters from the original series, of like in their attitudes and their what they look like, to kind of help impress upon us like what are these, what are, you know, what about what's happening in House of the Dragon eventually comes up again in Game of Thrones, you know,
Yeah, you
which
are.
wasn't handled that great necessarily with the final seasons, but I think that's what they're trying to kind of make up here, is to like show us what are the actual conflicts that would happen in the end of the series when it comes to like choosing between a male or female heir kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. And I feel like with what you mentioned, with Rhaenyra's mother, Emma, she spoke to Emma and she said that, you know, childbirth is a woman's battlefield. And you can see with Rhaenyra throughout the whole series, she simply wants to be a part of things. Like, that's why she kind of serves at the table of the counselors, because she wants to hear what they're talking about. She wants to be in the know. She wants to be a part of the decision making the same way that her father is. And despite the fact that her father is not a great king and not really a great dad at that, he does want her to know that like he values her and he loves her, because he like she is his daughter nonetheless, and he wants her to know that she's like a part of his life, you know, and he doesn't look down at her because she's a woman. That doesn't matter to her, because, you know, he loves her. And I think with what Emma said, it is very interesting, because this does happen a lot with shows that are set in, I don't know how to say this, medieval times, like Game of Thrones and like the House of Dragon. There's always that weird underlining like feminist tone of like, back in the olden days, all women could do was give birth to babies and be sex workers, and they didn't have any agency in their lives. So you guys should be so lucky that you have bank accounts and you can vote. You know, like watching the show and watching like Rhaenyra fight for power and fight for like agency and fight for like a voice so she could speak and just be like recognized as a Targaryen, and she wants to hold power the same way that her uncle Daemon held power. It's a tough battle to see, and I admire her for it. And also like Millie Acox, who plays her as like the younger Rhaenyra, is such a good actress. Like she really does hold
Oh
her own.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really like how they balanced like that, or how they showed the progression from Rhaenyra, her like wanting, like she said, she wanted to be a knight. She'd rather just fly her dragon and do that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
how we can see that that girl's passion for adventure and for excitement and for something different than what her mother had transitions into her desire to be a queen and to
Mm-hmm.
be a great queen and to learn these things. And I definitely think that the series loves her, but I think that like he makes her his heir as a way to like make, you know, to solve a problem, and like
Also
his
to make up for
parents,
the fact that like
her
his
mom died.
her
Not that
mom died,
he,
and also the fact that like Reigns should have been the ruler of the nation. Ben said he is. So he's like, this is going to make up for how, she didn't get the crown and I did. You know what I mean?
Right, like definitely, like I'm a good guy. I definitely think one
Yeah.
of the things we see with the series is that he wants to really believe that he's a good guy and that
He's
he's
a
a good
good king.
king.
He's a good father. He's a good
But he
man.
does stuff that, like, I mean, he
You let your
knows
wife
his wife,
die so you could have a son and you don't even name the
right,
son the heir. What was the
right,
point then?
right. And and he marries this young girl who very obviously does not want to have sex with him, but he does
Oh
it for
my
himself, right? Yeah,
gosh.
dude.
No,
Right?
let's talk about Alicent. Let's talk
No.
about Hightower. Because the second Otto was like, go to the king. He is in need of comforting. And she hesitates and he just looks at her because she can't say no because that's her dad. And also she can't say no because that's also the hand to the king. So she understands like the political complications. Like, of course you think my father isn't going to punish me if I say no to him. Like, yes, he very much would, girl. Don't play around, okay? He might be your daddy, but he very much has the hunger and ambition that most men do have in that court. And to go see the king, it doesn't seem like a strange ask because that is your friend's father, but at the same time, to see him when he's vulnerable and sad and down, and he isn't going to say no to somebody listening to him is very clearly like a play,
Yeah. Oh, and wear your mother's dress. Mm-hmm. Oh,
Oh,
it's so creepy. Okay. If we're going to talk about Otto Hightower, then we have to talk about the reoccurring theme of the second son, because we have several second sons. So Otto Hightower is the second son. We meet his
wait,
brother.
who's his brother?
We meet him, I want to say,
There are a lot of people in this movie. Even though
I think
we
it's the
focus on
wedding.
one family, there's a lot of people in
So
this in
many
the show.
people.
I'm trying to keep up.
I I know this is so. I mean, let me tell you, like, even as somebody who knows what's going on, like
Mm-hmm.
rewatching, I'm like, oh shit, that's right. I hadn't caught
And the
it at the
names are not
beginning, and I think it's at
easy.
Rhaenyra's
Rains,
wedding.
Rhaenyra, Alicent, Emma
Yeah.
spelled with an A. It's like, girl, go easy on me.
It's a lot. The family
Yes.
tree. There's
Gosh,
so
girl.
much, and yeah, but no, well, because you can know this by the fact that Otto, if he was the firstborn, he would be at Hightower, and he would have that seat, but he doesn't, and so being the hand of the king is really his only connection to power because he's the
Mm-hmm.
second son, and so in a way, he's a dark reflection of Damon, who is also the second son,
Mm-hmm.
and this
Which is why Damon
craving
doesn't
for,
like him because he sees through him.
right,
Like Otto wants
he
to act all high
knows,
and mighty because he's
right.
like, I'm the hand to the king. I'm a good guy. People see me and they respect me. Damon is a little menace. He's a troublemaker. That's why people don't like you. Like,
Right, well, we get that with Corliss's younger brother
yup.
Vaemond when he tries to make a grasp for his brother's birthright. Again, like these sons were, this is the structure of power. So much like we have women like Alicent who can only get, proximity to power through her father, her
Mm-hmm.
husband, or her son.
Mm-hmm.
And that how much that resentment eats her away and eats away at her, and how that is a mirror of the type of poison that these second sons have as well, where their resentment of feeling like they deserve. I mean, they're men, they're highborn men. They
Mm-hmm.
should have all these things, and they don't. And I think that, as creepy as it is, a great symbol of that is Damon's impotence. We see, I think it's in the
It's
is
in the
it the
first
first
episode.
episode? Yes. And his wife, when we see her in the scene where he kills her, she mocks him
Mm-hmm.
over it as well. So it is definitely a thing he has a problem with, which
Yeah.
again, this dude who's got got a great enjoyment of cutting off other dudes' dicks can't get his own up. And
It's,
but again, like a great reflection of
yeah.
that
You do
impotence.
see that in like characters like Damon where they revel in sex and violence. They revel in the gratuity of things and things that are gory and hard to look at. But he loves that. But when it comes to going forward and like having sex, especially like just like something intimate that requires you to open up and that requires you to like surrender yourself to someone else, and he can't do that, like even to just like finish, like he
Right?
can't
He
do
talks
it.
a good game.
Yeah.
Right? Like with the whole him trying to play seductor with Rhaenyra,
Mm-hmm.
and when she calls his bluff, he can't fucking commit and can't go
Mm-hmm.
through it, which is I think it's another great, like we see this with a lot of characters like Kristen Cole, who pins his whole identity on being this virtuous, glorious Kingsguard knight, honor and all that, and then then he nails her and is like can't handle the fact that he had sex and
And
he
then
had
he wants her to run off and marry him. What makes you think she's going to do that? She is the heir.
it's all about his ego, because if it like
What makes you so special,
she's his,
sir?
right? Right, exactly. It's that inability to like reconcile who he actually is, which he continually shows more of his ass as the show goes on, where he's like 1 minute saying, calling Rainey's like a spoiled, yeah, and then the next minute he's scolding Amon for saying that all women are a reflection of the mother, like and much like Alicent is hiding behind her visage of being a religious righteous woman,
Mm-hmm.
and she wanted to cut out the eye of one of Rhaenyra's kids.
Yes.
Like that you know um duality to all these characters is so fascinating.
Another thing is that like with let's stick to Damon for a second, because this is going to sound very petty and I don't care. I'm not a huge fan of Matt Smith. I don't think he's that good of an actor, if I'm being honest. And it might be because I was bitter when he became the next Doctor after David Tennant. Yes, I'm that person. I'm sorry.
It's
And
fine, it's fine.
honestly, like, I wasn't a huge fan of the Pond era. I love River Song. And I liked when
Same.
um Jenna Coleman's character was on the show. I forget Clara. I liked Clara, but we can all agree that the earlier iterations of Clara were not that well written and not that uh not
Right.
too, they didn't dive too deep into that character. You know what I mean? It felt very like heteronormative, almost like you're trying to replicate the Billy David magic and you're not doing that. And also Matt Damon looks like a Neanderthal. Like I can't look at his face. So I feel like he was just so perfect to play Damon, because Damon is a character who is a bad guy. You know he's a bad guy. You know he's a stinky little man. He's not good. But he plays that character so well, and the depravity that this character like gleefully revels in. You know what I mean? Like our first introduction to Damon really is when he sits on the Iron Throne, which he is not supposed to be sitting on. Obviously showing his power, his like desire to like for power and everything like that. And then I remember like I think one thing that really like helped me understand who Damon was when the messenger came to him and was like, "Hey, your brother's gonna send you aid," and he was like, and then he decided to absolutely
Breaks all
beat the
that.
life out of that kid, and then he decided to go to the sand dunes, to the crabs. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna fight
Oh
this
yeah,
battle
suicide
myself. No
mission.
one
Yep.
else can do this. I'm gonna do this myself. I'm done living on this island. I'm done dealing with y'all. I'm done dealing with Corlius and his brother. So all of you guys, honestly, just watch how it's done. And he decides to take on all these guys. And of course, it very much reminds me of like Jon Snow fighting that battle, and so and he pulls out the sword
Yeah.
triumphant thing, and I'm like, bro, you finna die. Like it's over for Jon Snow, y'all. R.I.P. for real. Like he's out this time. He's done for the count. And then of course he doesn't go out. But I find it so interesting that like he's like, I'm not gonna accept my brother's help. I would rather die on this island with crabs eating on my flesh as I still fight to my dying breath than accept help from my brother who doesn't deserve to be king, my brother who sits on his butt and doesn't do anything, my brother who's never seen battle in his life, my brother who has to have his men go out and find a boar for him to slay. And I absolutely not. I'll actually do it myself. I'm fine. I'm good, actually. Like, that is when I was like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned Jon Snow, because I do think that there are moments in the series where they're definitely doing either visual or just depictions of the characters, that are kind of supposed to remind us of these characters, like that sitting on the throne. Absolutely, to me, was a callback to Jaime Lannister, and that is a character that he has so many characteristics in common with.
Mm-hmm. He does have a lot of characteristics similar to Jaime Lannister. You're right.
Right. Oh, well, but they all have different things in common with those different, like, because like you said, like that foolishness of running into a battle to just,
Mm-hmm.
that's
So
definitely Jon
impulsive and
Snow. Yep.
ridiculous.
And like there are aspects of young Rhaenyra that remind me of Arya,
Mm-hmm.
and young Alicent that remind me of Sansa, and the conflict between those characters is very similar to the conflicts between Arya and Sansa.
Mm-hmm.
And without the queer coding, that absolutely, I agree that those who read those two as queer as well. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, as far as Alicent and Rhaenyra.
Yeah. Also, she kind of said it that she prefers like duck over goose, and I was sitting here like, now does she mean she likes women over men, or does she only mess with white people? Because I need an explanation. I was so like, I was so in my Tumblr era. I was like, I'm about to write a think piece. Like, you have
Right.
been warned, but I think it was
Yeah, which thing was
very,
just supposed to be a metaphor for the fact that she knew that he was gay.
yeah.
But I will tell you that like a lot of the there's a lot of it's hinted at a little bit in the show, but not that much. But it is, and there were some cut scenes too, but it is very like alluded to in the books that both Damon and Rhaenyra were bi.
Mm.
And in fact, like they're in the books, when they're married to their separate spouses, they're actually all living together, I think, on Dragonstone together. Yeah. And so there's a lot of like shipping of um oh my gosh, now I'm gonna forget. It's Lena? Yeah, his first wife, Lena, Valerian, and Rhaenyra and Daemon, that they were kind of like
Mm.
getting it on. But yeah, that's a side tangent. But yeah, there's like a lot. I think you can see Damon flirting with one of the waiters when in the episode where his wife dies. But there's also a cut scene where he actually has that same waiter like sitting on his lap. And yeah, so anyway, side.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Um, I do find it interesting, like, with, I guess I would say with Reina, because I feel like a lot of times when you're watching television, a lot of times people want to characterize certain characters in the show as like, as like, you're bad, you're good, you're like gray, and there isn't really like a good and bad you can say with any of these people, because everybody in House of Dragon has their own motivations as to why they do certain things. Like, Alicent was forced by her father, essentially forced by her father, to marry the king, and now that she's in this position of being the queen, she understands that she does not truly have power, so she needs to find some way to take it. And even though she's married to the king loves her, but he will not protect her in the same way he'll protect Rhaenyra. And Rhaenyra, even though like she's young, she doesn't really know anything, she doesn't really know what she's doing, but what she does understand is that she could take what she wants, because at the end of the day, she's never really known the consequence for her actions, or consequence in that regard for taking the things that maybe don't belong to her, or maybe she shouldn't be taking. Like when she and Cole have sex together, it's not that she seduced him in any way. Like, she wanted to do it, and he found that there would be no penalty to him if no one found out, so he went along with it. And I feel like when watching the show, it did like gave me that same feeling when I watched Game of Thrones. And of course, in Game of Thrones, you could tell who's good and who's bad. Like, Jon Snow, good. Sansa, good. Like, Joffrey, bad. Cersei, bad. You know? But in House of Dragon, because everyone's motivations, they try to put it clearly, or they try to, like, lead it out so you can deduce what's going on. You kind of have to,
Right.
like, you have to consider every move and every possible outcome that's happening in this show. And I think that's one thing that I do enjoy about the show, because it feels more like a political thriller at times, where certain implications of things can make it the more dangerous. Like when Rhaenyra is older and she is married to, how do I keep forgetting his name? Hold on, I have it written down. It's in my notes. Hold on. That's right there. Lenore. No, it's not. Lenore. Yeah, Lenore. Yes. When she's married to Lenore, and she starts sleeping with her knight, it's like, girl, we can tell you are both blonde. These kids have brown hair. You know, it's kind of like that's wrong. You're not supposed to do that. And so blatantly in her face, but like we know what's going on, and everyone else doesn't really know what's going on. It's like she's spitting on the throne. She's doing something on purpose. She's trying to embarrass you. It's like, no, maybe they just don't want to smash. Like, you know, like kings do it all the time. Daemon has 2 wives. He tried to get a third. Like,
Right. And
what's
we
up?
know that Aegon has tons of bastards, so much so that some of them are in the child fighting pits.
Literally.
Right. And but it is fascinating. It's another one of those things that that is like a question of like how much the gender politics is at play here, because at the end of the day she's still the heir to the throne,
Mm-hmm.
and they are legitimately her kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're not legitimately her husband's kids, but it doesn't necessarily, like, the only stance that everybody has is the idea that she's not playing along with their games, because at the end, like within the rules of this world, once she becomes queen, she can legitimize her kids with no problem. So that's not really a problem, and it is mentioned in the conversation that she has with Lenore before he fakes his death and runs off, where that they did try to have kids,
Mm-hmm.
and in the book that it's said that they definitely tried to have kids but they couldn't, and so it does make sense that she would still try to have kids with somebody else, because she needs heirs as part of like shoring up her claim for the throne, is that she has she has 2 sons, well, what, 3 sons, several sons, to be able to take her place as well. So, but again, it's that question of like, well, if it, like, the reason that so many of these noble lords are dislike her, and the things that are working against her, is within this world,
Mm-hmm.
everything about how power and money and land is distributed is based on these gendered hierarchies. And so, like, what proves legitimacy is based on who the father is. But if she's the queen and she can legitimize her kids because they literally, everybody saw them come out of her, what does that say to other people's claims? And if, like, the eldest daughter is, as equal, has equal claim as the eldest son,
Mm-hmm.
in the book there are several, like, we learn about several different noble houses
Mm-hmm.
that, like, the lords are nervous because they have elder sisters whose husbands could have a claim over their property if Rhaenyra's claim, reign goes through. And so there's like a lot of significant things other than what, like Allison's trying to present. It's a sin and it's disgraceful, but no, it's not. It's a political thing that
Mm-hmm.
she's flouted her power, and she's showing them it doesn't matter because she's a Targaryen and she can do what she wants, and it's all good and fun
Yeah.
until a woman is doing it and she is creating complications for all of these powerful men.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. It is very interesting just to see everything unfold in this series and to see how everything is connected through legacy. And I did want to get your opinion on like Rhaenyra's and Alicent's relationship with one another, because I I know I would be upset if I found out that my best friend was marrying my dad. It's kind of like, girl, why didn't you say something? Like,
Well,
what's going
I should
on?
I should say that they changed this from the book, because in the book, Allison is not the same age as Rhaenyra, and she's very much like the wicked stepmother type situation. Um, I like this change though, because um, it makes this really like about two women who are in this world and like who have every reason to be allies, but because of the construction of this world and power and the things that have been done to them, especially with Alicent and the abuse that she's gone through, they can't. And that makes it so much more interesting. Also, I was going to say that like when you talked about the ambiguity of like who's good, who's evil, all that, I love that even with this compressed timeline, we've been able to see the intergenerational trauma roll downhill of Alicent being, essentially like pushed into marriage and with this guy and who's her only access to power, and that we see how she treats her children as like she's hitting them and she's like, and ignoring them because they're just products that she had to produce. She doesn't really have a motherly a relationship with them, opposed to how Rhaenyra is with her kids, very loving, very supportive, very interactive with them. And that we see these differences so that we can see, like, even though Aegon is absolutely legitimately a piece of shit, he's that way because he's been abused and treated like shit, even though he is this prince, and and this is part of how he copes with being treated like crap and kind of ignored. And it's so fascinating that he's able to get away with all these things while his sister is getting in trouble for legitimately being in love and having kids she loves in a consensual polyamorous relationship with her, or non-monogamous relationship with her husband. um, which I need to go diving into the fanfic, because I'm like, I need more happy polyamory family, moments that we didn't get with all of them. But anyway, my point is that tone of ambiguity with all the characters is so much closer to the tone of the books than even Game of Thrones, because even, especially as the series progresses, the show really tries to keep like like John and Arya, they're good and stuff like that. And they are, and like we love them and everything. But as the books go on, things become a lot darker and a lot more complex, which like with each one of these characters, even the Starks and stuff, things get messy. John makes some really, like, especially in the book, the books, John really, I was going to say too, I believe George actually stopped doing heavy work on the show around season 4. um I think it's around there. That I know that like there's a lot of rumors about behind the scenes stuff that happened with him and the showrunners,
Mm-hmm.
but um, but you can definitely see, like, around season 3 and stuff, there's definitely significant character differences, and a lot of the characters and choices that were made, some of them legitimate because it's a TV show, but others I'm like, oh, they didn't understand these characters. And because John isn't necessarily like that at all. He's much more politically savvy in the books, as they go on, and he makes some really dark choices, but he does them for the best, for the good of the realm and people. And that's the kind of, like, I as hopefully as we go into season 2 with House of the Dragon, knowing the events, things get dark. People make some really dark choices,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and it's going to be even more difficult to be able to say who's necessarily the good person or the bad person, which is how it should be in depictions of war, I
Yeah.
think. And
I think that's
um,
one thing that I miss about Game of Thrones. Like, this is gonna sound not great, but like, remember when that guy got seduced by like the Red Witch or something, and then he sacrificed his daughter to like
yes,
win? I I forget why, but like I
Stannis
was
the Manus.
bro, I was waiting for that in House of Dragon, I'm not gonna lie. Like I was looking for like I need something that's brutal and terrible and like
Just hang on tight.
listen.
Season 2 is gonna blow the back off of this.
Let
Let me tell you.
I honestly like I can't stop thinking about the fact that like Viserys, say his name Viserys, right? The
Yeah,
king.
the series.
Yeah.
The series, yeah.
The fact that his wife was trying to birth a baby, give birth, and like these men, they don't even go in the room. They don't comfort them. They don't stay in the room. They just stand outside. Like, how can you face war, but you can't face childbirth? Like, that is the hardest thing a woman has to go through, and you can't even be there for her to support her.
Oh, you
It's
mean Damon? You mean Damon
no.
when he
I mean,
leaves,
I'm
or?
referencing Damon, but like, I mean that in like the general
But yeah,
sense of
like each
like,
one of these men can't manage when.
yeah,
I do love in, I mean, it's terrible when Emma dies, but I do think it was very respectful of the way that they intercut that with the tourney that's happening,
mm-hmm,
where the men are sword fighting. And as Emma said, that this is these are our wars, and that like there's a level of respect for women's work, or
mm-hmm,
like the female experience of this world,
mm-hmm.
that I think got lost in the sauce in the original series. And I do feel, to me, I feel the fingerprints of George R. R. Martin being like, no, 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 like this is
You will
messy,
not turn away from
right?
this.
Right,
You want to see
exactly.
battle? You will see something. I'll show you some.
Right, like, like you got excited when all of those sex workers got murdered. Well, now
Mm,
you're gonna watch a woman get brutally cut open
yes.
by her husband's command.
Yes.
Right, and I
And
do like the contrast of Lena. I think it's Lena, right? Okay,
who's Lena?
Damon's first wife. I know, like all these Lena's, all the. I think it's Lena, Damon's first wife.
Who never gave him a kid and he didn't lay with?
No, 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 no. His second wife. Second wife. Sorry, I
Isn't
always
her
forget
name?
about.
Doesn't her name start with an M?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna let me look it up
Massaria?
because is it?
Massaria.
No, no. There's his mistress,
Wait,
who
no, didn't they get married?
there's the first chick who's his mistress that he claims is pregnant with his kid, but she wasn't, and
They
that
didn't get
was
married?
Massaria, I think. And then he was married to the bronze bitch.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. So
and
rude.
so rude. He is such a bastard. I love him.
Such a piece of
Um,
work.
right. Okay. So yes, and then there was Lena Valerian, which was Laenor's sister, Corlys's daughter, that Daemon married, and they had the twin girls, and then she was pregnant with the third kid, and had the same problem where the baby didn't come out, and so she had her dragon burn her, which I love. I mean, it's terrible, but I loved how badass she went out. And I love the moment when her dragon hesitates to follow the command, like she doesn't want to burn. Oh, and it's just,
Oh, you mean Lenore's sister.
yes,
Oh my
yes.
gosh.
Like I liked the contrast of she's going through the same thing with Emma, but she has the autonomy to decide how she's going to die, and she's gonna, she took it over. And that there was, that was a female dragon too, so it had a moment there of like, oh, this is woman to woman. And
To be
I love.
honest, that made me so sad because I liked her character for whatever short time we had her on the screen, and I feel like she made a good husband for Damon. Like sometimes if you have somebody in your show who is like reckless, impulsive, prone to
Right, yeah.
disaster, you need them
Hmm.
to have someone who is a steady hand. And that steady hand always dies or gets banished. Like it's annoying. And I liked her because she's like the only black woman who had like lines in the show.
No,
Like we heard her
absolutely.
speak and we
And
got to
her
know
character
her
is
character was
so.
great. And she has a
I know.
personality.
Like, that is the big thing, like I'm sad about with the time compression in this first season, because there's so much more to all of these characters, especially the Valerians. We learn so much, and because they are such strong characters, um strong personalities, and they've got so much depth. And yeah, I love their marriage, and that you could see how how like he couldn't get away with shit with her,
Mm-hmm.
like, and that it was also showing an aspect of how much his bravado is kind of bullshit, because he really wants somebody to kind of put him in his place to some
Mm-hmm.
extent, you know? And so I liked how it showed that it makes sense, that each one of these relationships seem to make sense,
Mm-hmm.
rather than so often in stories we're like, oh, well, these just happen to be the two most attractive people in the room, so obviously they're going to end up, and it doesn't matter if they have chemistry or not. With each one of these relationships, we understand why they exist, and that it makes sense that they're there, even if it's a terrible relationship, we understand it. And like even with like Rhaenyra and Lenore, like their relationship, like we got to see how they made a functional marriage work,
Mm-hmm.
even with all of the things, challenges they had, and that they were actually making it work. And
I feel like
yeah.
Lenore did kind of like go into absentee parent mode sometimes, though, because you can see
Oh
Rhaenyra
yeah.
she's bonding with her kids, and like Lenore doesn't even like hug his kids or like touch them or
No,
look at
right when he
them.
comes in drunk right after she has the baby, right?
Yeah,
And or he
like
comes, it's after, like after she gets shaken down about, like she's convinced that they're gonna have to leave or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and she's like, you're gonna have to do something about, yeah, like I do like that he wasn't perfect, that you could see kind of like how, in his own way he was flouting people's perceptions, because he had his boyfriend there, and he could just kind of have fun, and that she would have to like kind of, tell him like, get your shit together, like we
Mm-hmm.
have kids, we've got to protect our house and everything. But yeah. uh,
I I personally found it interesting that Lenore, first of all, faked his own death, because that means he knows that Rhaenyra was like he knows the plot that Rhaenyra and Daemon had like spun up, and instead of like going after her, instead of like utilizing this against her, instead of blackmailing her, he was like, actually, you know what? Let them think I'm dead. We're gonna bounce, because I'm actually done with this stuff. I'm tired. My father is ambitious. My mother is kind and warm, and I love her. But oh my gosh, I just lost my sister. I lost the only other person I actually like in this world. Or New York, you're cool and everything, girl, but like seriously, we gotta move on. Like we're walking around. I'm black. You're blonde. Our kids have brown hair. There's something going on, and everybody knows it. I'm not gonna be part of the farce anymore. I'm already checked out, so I'm gonna check out for real.
so
Like,
I read it as that it was actually a plot that they came up together
mm,
with with Rhaenyra and Daemon, because I think Daemon's the one that's paying off the boat for him and his boyfriend to take out of Driftmark.
I don't feel like Damon would have wanted to. It's not that
It
like
was Rhaenyra's idea.
it was Rhaenyra's idea, but I don't feel like she would have included Damon in that, because I don't feel like Damon's the kind of guy who would be like, "Oh yeah, let's just let him sail off," because he would immediately be like, "No, let's kill him. He knows things. Like, cut it out." You know what I mean?
And
Like,
see, I just see it as absolutely that Damon would go along with it because he gets what he wants, and that he doesn't really care about shit as long as he gets what he wants, and he wants her.
hmm,
But again, like either way it works for me, because he doesn't die, because in the book it's recorded that he dies, and so I was really happy to get that surprise that, oh my god, no, they didn't kill the gay, yay.
yeah. I think that it is interesting with Damon and Rhaenyra's relationship, because when it first when she is first like spending time with her uncle, they both speak in High Valyrian together, which I think is very sweet and very kind. And I think it's a wonderful show of like their culture and how connected they are to it. Like she has a deep fascination for like who she is and like her line. And Damon also holds that dear to himself as well. And he's willing to like feed that hunger that she has and like help her learn more about it. And she looks to Damon more because he has hunger and ambition, and he is someone who wants power and like wants to seize it. And her father just kind of got it handed to him, so he's not really like going after it. He's not as willing. He's just kind of there. He's very passive about all this stuff. And it's only until she is named heir, really, and she can feel that like Damon is possibly like trying to encroach on her power, that she realizes that he's not like there's a reason why he's ambitious. There's a reason why he's hungry, and she sees that when she's young, and also when she's older, of course, because I always find those scenes that actors do to be like so like, because I feel like if I was an actor, I would tense up. Because like, you put your hand around my neck, I'm actually gonna fight you. Like, I'm actually gonna be like,
Right?
oh
Yeah.
no 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 no.
Like, oh.
It's like, Matt, don't even like you and me. We cannot spar. Like, you know. But I do find the relationship to be interesting. And when they do get married, I'm like, so we were all upset over her having brown haired sons, but this is not a problem. This this isn't an issue.
But again, the level of hypocrisy, because we're supposed to be up in arms when there was a rumor that she had sex with him when she was younger,
Mm-hmm.
but then Allison turns around and marries her son to her daughter, and
Mm-hmm.
they have kids. So like, it's again reflecting how the hypocrisy of power of like, oh, it's okay when it's, the people that we in power that we want to be in power to do the incest, but when they're not the people that we don't want in power, their incest is icky and weird. And it is like the show does a good job of showing like the the hypocrisy that's in the text when you're reading it, going, but like, where he's literally saying these things of like the abomination of their relationship, and you're like, but wait a minute, the guy that you're saying is the rightful king's married to his sister, so what are you? And then like the former king, his parents were brother and sister too, like, so it is, yes, I mean, it is, but it is what it is. And I like how in this way that incest is, we're seeing how it is both a product of power, gender power, like he's definitely grooming her, and but also it also is a political tool that Rhaenyra is using, because she knows by marrying Daemon, she's solidifying her claim even more, because
Mm-hmm.
now she has a husband that is also the grandson of the former king before her father was a king. So their kids also have an even greater claim than Alicent's children
Mm-hmm.
do. So like, that's how this weird chess game of these politics work. And that
It's
sorry, go ahead.
no. You can continue your thought. I was gonna say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I like that they give us that final dinner with Viserys before he dies, where we get to see like he gets to see like, oh, my family, I did the thing and everybody's happy, and then he goes to bed and everything goes to shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I loved that we got to see those dynamics, so that that's the thing that I like about the politicking that happened in Game of Thrones, is too, that like, so we could talk about all these big power moves and wealth and land ownership, but at the end of the day, so many of these big moments are about petty disputes between relatives, or people who really like are trying to do the right thing, like the series trying to do the right thing by all of the people he loves, and by doing so he fucks up royally, like, or trying to be a good person, like, like Ned Stark's greatest mistake was he was nice to Cersei Lannister and was going to give her a heads up, and that fucking turned around and bit him in the ass. And that those are these moments that we get of like, oh, it really is so much about just like one person making a mistake, or like Alicent, hearing the last words of her dying husband and misunderstanding which Aegon he's talking about, and then, like all of these little missteps is fascinating.
Mm-hmm. We can wrap it up with, I guess, what we expect for season two. I haven't watched the trailer. Um,
The trailer is more of a teaser, so there's just
okay.
like, we do see one of the girls, Damon's daughters, on Dragonback, which is so awesome, because there's things. What I can tell you based on what I know, what happens in the book is It is okay, buddy. I'll be right with you. Okay, go. You go lay down, and I'll be right with you. Um, what I can tell you about what's coming based on what's in the book is the stakes are higher, things are gonna get bloodier. People that we may like are gonna make some really tough choices that are gonna make us question things about them. Um, and that we're gonna meet House Stark. That's the one spoilery-ish thing that they announced the casting, so like, oh, okay, good. I don't know if we'll actually get to see Winterfell, but I don't know how they're gonna handle that part, but we'll see. We're gonna see more of the world, hopefully, because my gosh. But yeah, that look on her face in the final episode at the end there, that was a promise, and they're gonna keep that promise.
Yeah, I love that final look because one thing about Game of Thrones or House of Dragon, they show, don't tell, and that's the thing I
Right?
enjoy.
And you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, oh, it's not good. It's not. Oh, someone's gonna pay, and they're gonna pay with blood.
Yeah, that's
And let
true.
me tell you, the events of things like I'm sure I'm sad because I think if they don't get a third season, if they're just doing this as a 2-season, although I thought that George said that he wanted 4 seasons to tell the story, but um, but I don't know for sure. There's so many horrible, so much, you remember I don't remember which seasons it was. Maybe it was season 3 and 4 where the Rob's War with all the fighting in the Riverlands and stuff and all the nasty, fights and people being hanged and then, deserters hanging women and all that stuff. That that is what's happening in the war. There's fighting happening over in Harrenhal. There's fighting happening. Yeah, there's a lot of battling happening in the Riverlands. There's stuff happening, I think, over by in the Reach, I think, as well. I mean, it's that's the thing. This is much like the conflict that happened between Stannis and Renly. People are picking, houses are picking sides, and so there's and ancient beefs are coming out to play, and there's a lot of gnarly shit that happens, and I guess I can say is there's a reason they all have a lot of kids.
Okay. Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
it's gnarly, but yeah. So I'm excited to see what comes, and I definitely think that people. I mean, I want to know your opinion, but I've been telling friends that if they liked Game of Thrones, especially the scenes where things are gnarly and Arya being trapped in that dungeon and stuff like that, the scary stuff like that they should watch the show, because get through the first season where you get all the pieces in place, and then it's going to get really gnarly, and really cool dragon battles and stuff are coming. Well, what do you think? Would you recommend this to people who liked Game of Thrones?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure. I feel like I'd be like, I mean, if you want to watch it, but me personally, if someone told me, like, as a Game of Thrones fan, like, oh my gosh, I feel like you'll like this. I think it's really up your alley. I think you'll enjoy it. I'd be like, okay, yeah. And I start watching it. I'm like, this is not y'all.
Not the
Y'all
same.
misled me. You lied to me. You deceived me. You led me astray. What is this? And to be
Right.
honest, I'm sure that season 2 will be a lot more interesting, and there will be some heavy hitting episodes in there. But me personally, I feel like for the House of Dragon, it's probably going to be a show where I'm like, I can watch it whenever I get the time. You know what I mean? Whatever happens, happens. And I feel like because when this show first came out, it was so popular and it was all over TikTok, and I was just like, no. Even if people are talking about it all the time, you will not sway me. I cannot be moved. I cannot be convinced. I watch things when I want to watch them. I'm sorry. There are very few shows that do that for me, and I feel like this series is not it. It even makes me want to rewatch Game of Thrones, because at that point I'm like, well, it's not the same show. It's different. They won't even mention the Targaryens enough for me to have background on this show. So why? You know what I mean? So
No, that makes sense because I was curious about like what aspects of the show or what, what, because I do think that some this type of story appeals to some people and it doesn't appeal to everyone. And because Game of Thrones covered so many different, you had so many different characters,
Mm-hmm.
there was something for everyone to kind of grasp onto. And because it would go from having these like, table discussion scenes to having sword fights and to having, people changing shape and all these different things happening across, you never like there was always something to keep people interested. And so I was really wondering like, with this where it's deep kind of slow political drama stuff would appeal to other Game of Thrones fans. So it's good to know that like, oh yeah, no, okay, so
I
that makes
mean,
sense. And
there
sorry,
might
go
be
ahead.
other fans that would be into it. I feel like for me with Game of Thrones, one thing that was fun was that like when they talk about other people, you then see the people that they're talking about. You kind of understand like the different implications of why you don't like certain people. And then in House of Dragon, the people that they talk about are oftentimes people that you don't see on screen or people from the past, and it's just kind of like they're giving context. And sometimes they do talk about people that are on the screen, but like it's already people that we know and already established. So it's like, girl, what am I gleaming from this? You know what I mean? So
No, absolutely. No, that makes sense. And that is definitely a shortfall of the story of like it being so myopic is that we don't have the greater picture of where the whole of Westeros is at this point in history,
mm-hmm.
which would be more helpful. And again, like I think it's a shortcome of like what of the production itself of that. I feel like HBO was like, we're going to give you the money to do this, you better knock it out of the park, otherwise we're just going to trunk this whole franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like
Yeah, I feel like
that makes sense. So I appreciate like that makes sense to me. And then I have to think about, when I'm recommending it to people, like being like, well, this is, it's not like the spread out, like you have, there's a lot, it's dense. It's very dense.
mm-hmm.
It's a lot of stuff. And I wondered like how well it translates to people who don't know who everybody is
Mm-hmm.
and all their connections and the histories and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, overall, it is a pretty spectacular show. So if you guys are interested in it, I highly recommend you go check it out. And we can just go ahead and end the podcast with our recommendations. I think, just one recommendation. I started watching this show called This Way Up on Hulu. I think it's a Channel 4
Oh,
sitcom with
uh-huh.
Aisling B. And I didn't remember her name. It's Shannon Horgan, who is one of my favorite actresses. I think she's hilarious, and the two of them together are phenomenal. And the show is about Asling B's character, Anne, I think that's her name, and she is leaving a rehab facility after having a teeny little nervous breakdown. And you kind of just you follow her life after that, and it does feel like Fleabag, except a little less despair and a lot more comedy. And there are other characters involved in it too, but it does hold like the small cast like Fleabag has. And it's a very good show. If you like shows that are full of dark humor and kind of have a lens on mental illness, that I would highly suggest you check it out. I'm watching it on Hulu. It has 2 seasons on Hulu right now. I don't know if there's a
Two
season
seasons.
3 yet, but I hope that season 3 comes out soon because I do love the show.
No, awesome. I'm always looking for new things to watch. I have two recommendations that I think might appeal to people who like House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, although they're not exactly like them. They're like aspects of the show. So the first one I'll recommend is Harlots, which is on Hulu, and I think it's 3 or 4 seasons. The show's complete, and it's set in the 18th century England, and it follows sex workers in England during that time. And it's a generate. So we have one lady and her 2 daughters who she's getting into sex work. And so we kind of learn about her past with her former madam, who is now her competition. And you just kind of it's like getting to see that time in England from the ground view of you're getting to see the people who are poor and who are like not even working class. They're kind of like under that. And it is definitely, if you like all the sex scenes in Game of Thrones and kind
Mm-hmm.
of the gross aspect of sex and things like that, it's there. So like, you know, be warned about that. And it is, but it is, all the main cast are women. There's a lot of queer rep in there too. And there's even some disability rep as well in the later seasons. And it's just really, I'm always wanting to see more like positive, or not positive, but um like respectful depictions of sex work across history and in media, of like being able to see the reality of what it was like, and not just like the, you know, cautionary tale.
Mm.
And that this also deals with like the inner politics of that world, and also
Yeah.
how it's adjacent to, you know, power and privilege.
Oh, I do want to
And
say real quick, I have been wanting to watch this show forever. I should watch it now that you remind me. And this reminds me of how like there was this weird trend on TikTok where everybody wanted to be a stripper or like a sugar baby, and it was so strange because I feel like there was a weird like romanticization of that whole like area of work, and I feel like a lot of people are looking at the money in the shoes. Not a lot of people talk about how like strippers need bodyguards to walk them to their car because these men will stay after to try and like snatch these women up, or they'll try and like bribe these women to sleep with them. And being a sugar baby, it's not just like, oh, you just sit on the phone, you talk to him, you text him. Like, you have to give up sugar. Like, only 5% of sugar babies just talk to these old men, you know? And I feel like that show would be
yeah,
really essential for some people to watch.
well, and I think that a lot of people don't realize how much emotional labor is labor of sex workers. Like a lot, like I follow a bunch of sex workers on social media because I'm always fascinated with both like the reality of what it is, and also, you know, want to do activism to help and support them. And that is a thing of like that like romanticizing the idea of getting paid to just be pretty, when it's like, no, like sex workers real work, and they do a lot of work that you know, that you would not want to do necessarily. And I'm not just talking about the sex part. It's like, you know, you have to care about people, you have to listen to the clients, you have to like, it takes a certain person to be able to do that finessing of people, and also all the physical aspects of it too. So yeah, no, it's a good show, I really like it. And the other recommendation I was going to make is Gangs of London.
Oh, that is a show that
I
I've
think,
seen one or two people talk about, but I really
yeah,
want to watch it because every single person that I've seen on TikTok talk about it was like, if you like slow horses, you'll like the show. And I love slow horses. I love it.
it is like, I have not, now I need to put down Slow Horses. I need to watch that because I love Gangs of
Slow
London.
Horses is on Apple
Like,
TV, just to let you
oh,
know.
Apple TV?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's on my list of like, when I get a deal for Apple TV, I'll go that and catch up with all the other shows on there
Yeah.
that I need to watch. But
Absolutely.
this one, Gangs of London, the only streaming service that I know that it's on where you don't pay for it is AMC Plus. So it's not necessarily openly available to a lot of people. And that's in America. I think in other countries, I think I want to say it's on Sky. I think it's like Sky One or something like that. But, you know, Google it, you'll be able to find where it's airing. And it has definitely all of those inner family political, you know, machination stuff that a lot of people like in Game of Thrones. But then it also has like the most dynamic, breathtaking fight choreography
Mm.
ever see. If you've ever heard of the movie Raid and Raid 2, I think it's I always forget the director's name, but this is a guy that has a history in making action films. Let me see.
Is it
Raid.
Michael Bay? Is it like someone
No,
else?
this is
Guy
actually
Ritchie?
no. This is a director, Gareth Evans, and I believe I want to say is he American or he's English? So he's Welsh. He's a Welsh filmmaker that actually went to Indonesia and made a lot of like really famous Indonesian films like Raid and Raid 2 that are like amazing action films, high intensity, amazing, highly recommend to people who are action fans. Um, And then he got this, I think it's BBC that he got this deal to do this show. And so you have like the dynamic action fight scenes that you would see in a really good, you know, Asian action film, but you're having them in this gritty, you know, contemporary London, criminal underworld where there's all definitely people who like Sopranos too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the mob aspect of Sopranos will like this. And this is all about like people's dirty laundries, terrible fathers who want to be good guys but are not, and like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, power hungry moves and people being tortured. And I mean, I will say it is, there is like a whole scene where a dude's having a fight with another dude who has a cleaver. There's so many things, so many things. People who like Old Boy will like a lot of the action that's in this series. But I
Mm-hmm.
love this because it has amazing women in it too,
Mm-hmm.
and the people recognize Catelyn Stark, the actress that plays Catelyn Stark, is in this. She's badass. She's so badass in this. But yeah, and it's a pretty diverse cast too. Um, I don't think there's like in the main cast, we will like the two primary families that we follow is a Black family and an Irish family. So, and they like the two patriarchs of the family are running this organized crime, um, you know, group. And, you know, they even tell the story of like when the two dads first came to England, they were met with signs of no Blacks and no Irish. And so that they, you know, got together and worked on their criminal organization. But yeah, I highly recommend Gangs of London, and that's on AMC Plus, and then Harlots, which is on Hulu. So
Okay, I'm definitely gonna go check out both those shows. Fangirl Jeanne, sorry, Jeanne.
I was gonna say I'm gonna check out Slow Horses and This Way Up. I'm so excited. I didn't realize I was gonna get new recommendations of things to watch, and I need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so do you want to plug anything? Where can the people find you?
Well, I'm anywhere on the internet under FangirlJeanne, and that's JeAnne. I spend most of my time on TikTok, although I am active on Blue Sky, and occasionally will still post on Twitter. Infrequent because that is a hellscape and it's really difficult to
Mm-hmm.
like manage it. But I am most active on TikTok, and I'm doing videos there, doing critical analysis, media criticism, and general weirdness on there, trying to get used to people seeing my face.
Mm-hmm. Totally get that.
So
Okay, well, you guys, you can find Jean at all the socials down below. Thank you again for coming on the pod. It's really great to have someone on who is so knowledgeable and smart and like can just like kind of break down certain concepts in terms of like a show and like media and like pop culture. So it was really awesome to have you on. And
thank you for having me. It is so fun to
yeah,
talk about this, especially just like getting the insight of someone who doesn't have that information. So it gives me a better perspective
right.
on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And like you pointed out a lot of like really like very valid issues with how it's set up. And plus I love to talk shit about the Oscars and media news with somebody
Yeah.
else who understands, like,
Yes.
yeah. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And guys, don't forget to check out Jean on all of her socials down below. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Listen to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to tell your friends and family about your new favorite podcast. I've been meaning to watch that. And we will see you guys next week with a new topic and new guests like we do every single week. Bye.